All right, so let's help you place all these developments and get some perspective from Dr. Sthembiso Bhengu, who's director of the Chris Hani Institute. The doctor joins us now via our video link. And Dr. Bhengu, it's great to chat to you. I wonder what stood out from you from the address that we've seen, particularly from Cosatu President Zingiswa Losi. For me, there was a moment there where it almost seemed that a line in the sand had been drawn. The direct quote is something to the effect of, workers love the ANC, they want to support the ANC, but their patience is not indefinite. Do we have reason to believe that there is a move to finally act from workers if indeed they feel like the ANC is no longer working to their interests?
Good morning, Ayanda, and good morning to the viewers. I'm sorry, but just slight correction. It's actually Chris Hani Institute. We don't have Baragwanath. It's just CHI. Yes, obviously, Cosatu primarily, as much as it is, it applies what we call social unionism, which is essentially the kind of unionism that expands from the workplace into society, and so it's not just limited to the workplace, but the heart of what a union is essentially the defending of the interest of its members. And in this case, quite a significant number of Cosatu affiliates, public sector unions, that find themselves in which firstly the state reneges on the already agreed collective agreement on wages, and now is offering 0% wage increase. Obviously, the president today mentioned that is open for discussion. But essentially, as a union that has a significant number of public service workers, it is an issue for them. Where does the ANC government stand on the issue of essentially potentially having workers almost having 4 years of actual no wage increases or wage freezes? And so it makes sense that primarily a line will be drawn in the sand. But by the way, remember that the issue of workers' wages is not the only issue. In the recent Central Executive Committee of Cosatu, if you remember, there was a view presented by some of the unions, mainly led by Nehau, of which is not just the issue of public service wages, but also there was the issues around corruption and the sometimes continuing lack of clarity around where the ANC is moving, being decisive around dealing with the corrupt elements, dealing with the perception that is out there in society, that it is essentially serious about renewing, serious about essentially unstripping itself of this quagmire that is continuing to find itself being entrenched, of which obviously the PPE scandals did not help that situation. And so there is that continuing issue beyond just the issue of workers of public sector wages, but there is the continuing existence of uncertainties and questions around how is the ANC itself really dealing with some of the key challenges.
Right. Help us place the role of unions in our current, call it, democratic ecosystem. Part of the sentiments also shared there by Zingiswa Losi is that, Labour is probably in a relatively weaker position than it was a few years ago. And what she attributed that to is that you're finding more and more young people who are relatively more educated now taking up more space within the Labour sector, and they don't have the sentimental attachments that perhaps their parents had to the likes of Cosatu, the SACP, and even the ANC itself. What does that mean for organized Labour in our context?
I think the president of Cosatu was mentioning relevant points, but maybe just to bring more this complexity. It's interesting to note that the formation of many of the unions that became the heartbeat of Cosatu. So NUM, what was MAU, then became NUMSA, and a number of other industrial unions, SACT, for instance. It's important to remember that these unions were formed right at the heart of apartheid, when actually forming unions was not allowed. But through their struggles, they managed to force recognition agreements. And so while it is true that the changes in the labor market scope are affecting how unions are able to organize. In fact, I am aware that Cosatu is currently trying to look at a review of what has been in the last, let's say, up to 2015, and some projections looking into the future. And one of the things that is critical, I think, for the Federation to look at, not just for COSATU, but for all the unions, essentially, in the changing context, maybe the relevance of unions is going to be really being able to link their workplace struggles, but also linking them with community struggles, because as I mean, currently we are standing at around 31% unemployment, which we are dating at about 42% of the expanded. So which means almost half of South African adults are not employed. So that does mean, in a way, that if you want to engage in real serious struggles moving forward, you can't just target the workplace, you also have to target the community. And so that really ability to articulate workplace struggles and community struggles is going to be probably the most effective way in which unions, in this case of COSATU as a federation, but also all the other unions, to essentially make meaning and essentially have almost the pulse, because the pulse in the workplace is not enough if it does not link with the pulse in the community.
Dr. Bhengu, great getting your perspective on this Workers' Day. Appreciate your time indeed. Dr. Sthembiso Bhengu is the director of the Chris Hani Institute. Thanks very much indeed. Right.